Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So by the title of today's video, you can tell that I'm going to be discussing some of my favorite books written by Black authors, as well as a few books that I have on my TBR that I hope to get to in 2023. Of course, we should all be reading diversely 365, not just during a specific month or a specific day, but it is Black History Month, and so it is a great opportunity to pick up these books and support Black authors, support Black art. I feel like I'm finally starting to get my footing when it comes to my reading and recommendations, and so I'm really excited to share these with you guys today. So before we get started, you guys already know I'm coming at you with a disclaimer. I accidentally overslept this morning. I usually wake up very early to film my videos, but I overslept this morning and so it is a little bit louder in my apartment than normal, and so I'm really sorry if you hear any of that feedback, any of that noise in the background. I'm going to try my hardest to speak as loudly as I can. That way it can hopefully wash out some of that noise. The last thing that I wanted to say is Beehive, make some noise in the comments because we are finally getting that Renaissance World Tour that we were hoping for, and I'm so excited. Beyonce officially made her announcement a couple of days ago that she will be going on a world tour, and she is going to start out in Europe first and then make her way to the States. If you have a loved one or a friend or a family member that is Beehive until they die, keep them in your thoughts and prayers for the next couple of weeks because we're going to be going through it trying to secure some tickets, okay? So wish me luck, y'all, and if you are also looking to get tickets, I'm wishing you luck as well. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started. I'm not going to go in any particular order, and I'm not going to show any romance or thrillers in this video because I do plan on filming a Black love / Black romance book recommendations video, so that will be coming your way soon. So definitely make sure you subscribe and turn on those post notifications so that way you'll be notified when I do drop that video. And I may or may not film a recommendations video highlighting thrillers written by Black authors. I haven't read that many yet, and I have 3 that I plan on reading in a reading vlog, so I'm not sure if that video will be coming out this time around, so that's why none of those genres are in here. These are more contemporary, nonfiction, plays, etc, etc. The first book that I have here is a classic, and it is A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. So this is one of my absolute favorite classics of all time. I actually read this book as well as watched the movie back in high school, and I fell in absolute love with it. So this play is set in 1950s Chicago, and it follows a Black family, but it more specifically follows one character named Walter, and I think Walter is the oldest and maybe the only son within the family. And so Walter is always trying to figure out ways to get himself as well as his family out of poverty and just making a name for himself in this world that is so harsh and cruel to Black people. And so you really just follow Walter as well as his family throughout the entire play of just dealing with a lot of trials and tribulations, ups and downs and hardships during this time period in Chicago. There are a lot of generational issues as well because you get to see how Walter's family's actions in the past have impacted them but also led them to being in this situation that they're in currently. And so this play and this story is just so important because Lorraine Hansberry does an incredible job at exploring race, poverty, Black personhood, Black manhood, what it means to be the matriarch or the patriarch of a Black family, what it means to try to come up in a world that again is so harsh and cruel to you, and the list goes on. So I cannot say enough great things about A Raisin in the Sun. It is just so important, and I have reread this play as well as rewatched the movie hundreds of times. So if you haven't read A Raisin in the Sun yet, I definitely recommend picking this up and giving it a read. It is very accessible. The language is very accessible. It's not written like a Shakespeare play or anything like that. The next book that I have here is another classic, and it is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. So I actually read this last year, I think back in the spring / summertime. I can't remember which month, but I definitely read this last year, and I rated this I think a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the story, and Zora Neale Hurston is definitely an author that I want to read more from. I was actually watching Gabby from Baddie in a Book. Definitely make sure y'all subscribe to my girl first of all because Gabby, her content, love. But anyways, I was watching one of Gabby's book haul videos, and she hauled Zora Neale Hurston's entire like book collection box set, and I want to pick that up because I really want to read more of her books. And so this story is about a woman named Janie who lives in the Deep South, I think during the late 1800s, early to mid 1900s. I'm not 100% sure what the time frame is in this book, but it's definitely historical. And so you just pretty much follow Janie throughout the story of her telling you her life story and everything that she's endured. And so this is a heavily character driven novel, and I will say that Janie is maybe not the most conventional or perfect main character, but I really enjoyed learning more about her and her story. I thought Janie was such an interesting, complex, and nuanced character just because of some of the decisions she makes throughout her life and some of the situations that she finds herself in. I felt as though Zora Neale Hurston reiterated to the reader that at the end of the day, this is your life and you have to make the decisions that are best for you and your circumstances and your situation. Whether other people agree with it or not, that's neither here nor there. You just need to make sure that you are happy with your life and yourself and your decisions and your actions. I just felt like that was the central theme of the story because, like I said, there are so many different things that Janie gets herself into that I kind of scratched my head at a bit, but when I really like remember that this is her life and that the way that she's reflecting on it isn't filled with sadness, it's definitely more of like a, this is my life, I lived it, and I'm not shameful of that. I don't regret it. And I felt like Janie served as a great vessel or a great character for those messages and for those points to get across to the reader. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed about the story was the writing and the dialect. I loved how Zora Neale Hurston incorporated raw Southern Black dialect in this story because this was unheard of during the time that this was published. There weren't many stories written by Black authors that were published in general, but that were published with this type of dialect incorporated throughout the story. I'm not sure if there's any audiobooks for this, but if there is one, then that's definitely an alternative that you can look into. But I read this physically and I absolutely adored this story. As you can see, I tabbed it up. Black Girls Must Die Exhausted and Black Girls Must Be Magic, both written by Jane Allen. And so I actually read Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, I think back in 2021, maybe early 2022, I'm not 100% sure, but I did read this some time ago. And then I also read Black Girls Must Be Magic not too long after that. So there is supposed to be a third book in this series, so it will be turned into a trilogy. I think Jane Allen is still working on it, I'm not 100% sure, but there is supposed to be a third book, which I'm very excited about because I actually enjoy the series. It's not 100% perfect to me, but I still look forward to reading about Tabby and her life and where life is going to take her. And so this is another heavily character driven series. It follows a woman named Tabitha, aka Tabby, going through the highs and lows of life, but doing that while being a Black woman. There are a lot of important discussions in here surrounding race, surrounding identity, surrounding Black femininity, Black womanhood, about texturism, about hair. There's just so much wrapped up into this series and Tabby's life in particular that I just find so refreshing. I really love the fact that we have a literary fiction series that follows a normal, regular, degular Black woman. I just love how slice of life this is. I feel like we don't have a lot of stories within the literary fiction space or the women's literary fiction space that centers around a Black woman, and we follow her from book to book. I just know that there are so many Black women that can relate to Tabby, but also relate to Laila or relate to Lexi, who are Tabby's best friends. There's just so much I could say about this series that I love and adore. There are, of course, heavy hitting topics and hard conversations that are brought up in this book. I definitely recommend looking up triggers, but all in all, this is a true slice of life story. Okay, y'all, so I'm going to share my favorite books slash recs with you before we get into the books that I have on my TBR that I hope to get to sometime throughout the year. The next book that I have here is Hurricane Summer by Asha Bromfield. So of course I was going to have to throw this one in here because this book made it into my top 22 books of 2022 favorites video. I will leave that linked up above in the card somewhere, but this along with Before I Let Go were my top 2 books of the year, period. They are so different from one another, but they both have impacted me in ways that I cannot explain and they alter my brain chemistry. This one in particular truly altered my brain chemistry, and I'm still thinking about this book to this day. So the story follows a young Black Canadian girl named Tilla, and Tilla actually lives in Canada with her mother and her sister Mia. Tilla and Mia's father isn't as present in their life as he once was. He does live in Jamaica, so he spends a lot of his time traveling back and forth between Canada to see the girls whenever he can. So because of all of this, as well as some other things, Tilla's relationship with her father Tyson is very strained. Mia, on the other hand, has a great relationship with Tyson because she's still young and she still doesn't really understand the severity of him not being as present in her life as he should. But Tilla and Mia's mother suggests to them that they should go spend the summer in Jamaica with Tyson. And so Tilla is not happy about this, but she has no choice but to go. And so Tilla and Mia do end up going to Jamaica for the summer. You essentially follow Tilla throughout the story coming of age during the summer. And so she experiences a lot of positive things, a lot of happy things, a lot of highs, but she also experiences some traumatic lows. There's a lot of danger and a lot of violence lurking around the corner waiting for Tilla. So I don't want to give too much away, but definitely recommend looking up triggers. Like, please make sure you do. But like I said, Tilla does come of age during the summer, and while she's dealing with all of these different emotions and feelings and also trying to figure out her relationship with Tyson and where she stands in his life and where he stands in hers, the island is actually hit by a hurricane. And so Tilla not only has to figure out all of the things going on in her personal life, but she also has to figure out how she's going to survive this hurricane. And the story takes off from there. So as you can hear from that synopsis, this is a very triggering, emotional, devastating read, but it is also so important and so poignant. You can tell that Asha Bromfield poured her entire heart, soul, body, and mind into this book. I love that this book not only explores Black girlhood and Black fatherhood and how the two intertwine, but I also love that that Asha Bromfield made Jamaica its own character. The atmosphere in this book is brilliant. I have become so obsessed with Jamaica after reading this book. She does such an incredible job with showcasing the beauty of the island and just how it's different there, you know? So there are just so many different aspects and layers of the story that I adore and that I'm obsessed with that I can't get into because we'll be here all day. But I definitely recommend picking this book up because I think that this can resonate with so many different people in so many different ways, especially when it comes to the exploration of Black girlhood and Black fatherhood, like I said. So yes, shout out to Asha Bromfield. She's actually coming out with a new book this year, and Hurricane Summer will be turned into a movie. I am so excited about that. So now we're going to move on to the books that I have on my TBR that I hope to get to very soon, and I'm not going to go in any particular order. The first book that I have here is Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I still have not read this book yet. As you guys can see, I'm flopping so hard when it comes to reading Tiffany D. Jackson's catalog. I'm hoping to get a better handle on that very soon, but this is a book that I'm definitely hoping to prioritize because I've heard nothing but great things about Grown. I just feel like this is a story that's going to be right up my alley. As devastating and emotionally charged this is going to be, I just feel like this is going to be one of those books that becomes one of my favorites. So this story follows a girl named Enchanted, and Enchanted is an aspiring songwriter slash singer, I'm pretty sure, and so she's really looking to break into the music industry, and she actually ends up crossing paths with this man who is a bit older than her, who works in the music industry. And so him and Enchanted strike up a conversation. They start to network. So Enchanted looks at this as a great opportunity. Finally feels like she's going to break into the industry once and for all. But as the story progresses, you start to realize that this man has ulterior motives, and the story takes off from there. There are some suspenseful and thrilling parts to this, so I'm really excited to see how that all plays out. But I am very nervous going into this just because of how deep the triggers run for this story. And I have heard people comparing this book and the characters to the R. Kelly situation and the whole surviving R. Kelly ordeal. And so, like I said, very nervous to dive into this book, but I know that I need to do it at some point because I have heard nothing but great things about this story, and I want to join in on the discourse, okay? I want to join in on all of the Tiffany D. Jackson discourse, so I'm really going to make it a point to read more of her books and prioritize them throughout my TBRs. The next book that I have here is Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. So I actually started Memphis last year, and so I was so excited when I found this book in Target. I picked it up and I started it right away, but I had to put it down because this book has a lot of trauma in it. I could have gathered that from reading the synopsis that there was going to be those type of themes. When I was really reading the book, I realized that it was a lot more traumatic than I just thought it was going to be. And so I had to put it down because I wasn't in the right headspace to continue on with a book like this, but I definitely want to get back to it because I really did enjoy the writing, and I was curious to see how the story was all going to unfold and make sense in the end. So right here in the flap it says, "The things women do for the sake of their daughters." Summer 1995. 10-year-old Joan, her mother, and her younger sister flee her father's explosive temper and seek refuge at her mother's ancestral home in Memphis. This is not the first time violence has altered the course of the family's trajectory. Half a century earlier, Joan's grandfather built this majestic house in the historic Black neighborhood of Douglas, only to be lynched days after becoming the first Black homicide detective in the city. Joan tries to settle into her new life, but family secrets cast a longer shadow than any of them expected. As she grows up, Joan finds relief in her artwork, painting portraits of the community in Memphis. One of her subjects is their enigmatic neighbor, Miss Dawn, who claims to know something about curses, and whose stories about the past help Joan see how her passion, imagination, and relentless hope are, in fact, the continuation of a long, matrilineal tradition. Joan begins to understand that her mother, her mother's mother, and the mothers before them persevered, made impossible choices, and put their dreams on hold so that her life would not have to be denied by loss and anger, that the sole instrument she needs for healing is her paintbrush. Unfolding over 70 years through a course of unforgettable voices that move back and forth in time, Memphis is an indelible portrait of inheritance, celebrating the full complexity of what we pass down in a family and as a country: brutality and justice, faith and forgiveness, sacrifice and love. I still love reading that synopsis because it's just so well written and so well told. But as you can hear from that, the story is definitely generational. There is a lot of generational trauma woven throughout this story. And again, I understood that when I read the synopsis, but there was just a lot happening, I felt like, in such a short amount of time that I had to take a breather. So I am really looking forward to returning to this one. And can we just get into this cover for a second? Like, this is absolutely beautiful. And I just love Black art like this. The next book that I have here is Don't Cry For Me by Daniel Black. So this is a book of the month pick, and I actually bought this back in February of 2022. So I've had this on my TBR for a full year, and that is embarrassing. So maybe I should try to sneak this into my February TBR plans and try to give this a read very soon, because I really don't want this sitting on my shelf for too much longer. I am still very interested in the story, but I've had other books that I've been prioritizing, so yeah. So in the flap here it says, a black father makes amends with his gay son through letters written on his deathbed in this wise and penetrating novel of empathy and forgiveness. So I know that this is going to be a very, very emotional book. I hope I don't cry when I read this one. No pun intended with the title, but I really hope that I don't cry when I read this, but who knows, y'all, who knows. I have seen a few people on Bookstagram give this glowing reviews, but they did say that it was so traumatic and it was so upsetting that they did choke up or cry towards the end. And I'm a very sensitive person, I'm a very empathetic person, so I'm probably going to end up crying or choking up a bit when I read this. I'm still looking forward to reading this nonetheless, because this just sounds like a very interesting plot, and I feel like this is one of those books that is also very needed. The second to last book that I have here is The Trayvon Generation, written by Elizabeth Alexander. This is actually a collection of notes and essays that explores the Trayvon generation, so the kids and the teenagers that grew up in the wake of Trayvon Martin's murder back in February of 2012. But it also explores race, identity, culture, and what it means to be black in America. So this is another book that I'm really looking forward to getting to sometime soon, hopefully. Just noticed that this book has pictures in it. So like I said, looking forward to reading this one at some point. We have one more book left, and the book that I have here is Digital Black Feminism by Katherine Knight Steele. This was a book that wasn't even on my radar until recently. I was actually reading an NBC News article, and the article is titled How Tory Lanez Trial Bloggers Are Shaping the Conversation Around Megan Thee Stallion. And I just thought that this was such an interesting article, and so I will leave a link down below just in case you're interested in checking it out too. But this book was actually mentioned in that article because it directly correlates with what Megan Thee Stallion was and is facing when it comes to internet trolls, and how a lot of these bloggers are doing more harm than good when it came to the trial, and also just Megan's image as a whole. There was a lot of misogynoir and just a lot of wicked and sinister things at play when it came to the trial, and just the treatment that Meg received from the general public. Katherine Knight Steele, as well as a few other academics, really get into the nitty-gritty of the relationship between black women and technology and the internet. Also online harassment, as well as algorithmic bias and influencer culture. So there's just so much wrapped up into a black woman's experience on the internet, and just knowing that we all have had similar experiences or have seen other black women go through the things that this book I know is going to talk about. Because Meg is not the only black woman that has faced extreme levels of online harassment and trolling. We see it all the time with other black women too. So this is a book that is really high on my TBR, because this is a topic that is very important to me as someone who is a black woman and who works in social media in particular. I see this type of stuff happen every single day without fail. Like I said, I'm just really interested in reading more about this topic and seeing what Katherine Knight Steele, as well as these other academics, have to say about all of this. Kim Foster, aka For Harriet, is actually featured in this book, so I definitely want to pick this book up and read it soon because I love her content. She is doing such great work on the platform, and I just love her content, like I said. So really excited to see what she has to say about this relationship. Alright y'all, and those are all of the books that I had to recommend to you today. Please keep in mind that the favorites that I shared in this video is not an exhaustive list. There are obviously a lot of books written by black authors that I love and adore, but I've already talked about them in other videos or on my Bookstagram. So like I said, this is not an extensive or an exhaustive list, but these are books that I have not really either talked about on my channel as much, or that I just wanted to plug again. I really hope that you guys are able to take away some recs and gems from this video. Definitely comment down below and let me know which books you're interested in checking out, or if you've read any of these. I would love to know. Alright y'all, so I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me and my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video and now at the beginning of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!